Welcome to another inspiring video on Buddhist motivation. Today's discussion is centered around a simple yet profound truth. Stop caring, everything will get better. This title may seem counterintuitive to some, but it aligns closely with both the philosophy of the renowned thinker Elias and Buddhist teachings. Both philosophies teach us that our constant attachment to external validation and the need to please others are the true sources of stress and unhappiness. Letting go of this attachment can lead us to inner peace, and the life we desire will begin to unfold naturally. Before we dive deep into this story, I'd like to encourage you to take a moment to like this video and subscribe to Buddhist Motivation. Your support helps me continue creating content that offers insights into a more peaceful and purposeful life. And don't forget to share your thoughts in the comments section below. Your reflections are what drive me to keep producing more meaningful content for you. In my opinion, the core message of this title, Stop Caring, Everything Will Get Better, is incredibly powerful. In today's world, where everyone is constantly seeking approval and validation from others, it can be easy to forget the importance of detaching from these external pressures. By letting go of the need to prove ourselves or live up to others' expectations, we can begin to live authentically and find peace within. Story example. Imagine someone who has spent their life chasing the approval of others. They work tirelessly for success and recognition, but never stop to question if this path aligns with their true desires. For years, they've followed societal expectations, feeling trapped in a cycle of meeting external standards. But when they begin to let go of the need for validation, when they embrace the Buddhist concept of non-self, anatta, their life starts to shift. They stop living for others and start living for themselves, discovering peace and authentic joy in the process. The freedom of letting go. In Buddhism, letting go doesn't mean abandoning life or responsibilities. It means releasing the invisible burdens we place on ourselves, our attachment to external expectations, judgments, and the need for approval. By letting go of these attachments, we free ourselves from anxiety and fear, understanding that we cannot control everything in life. Instead, we embrace the present moment and allow life to unfold naturally. The paradox of non-attachment. Here's the paradox. The less we cling to control, the more freedom we gain. And Buddhist teachings. Non-attachment doesn't mean detaching from life, but rather from outcomes. We become more present, more authentic, and less burdened by the fear of judgment. When we stop trying to control everything, we make room for new opportunities to arise naturally. Mindfulness and the art of letting go. Mindfulness helps us become aware of our attachments, whether to thoughts, emotions, or external validation. By observing these attachments without judgment, we can begin to release them. Through this practice, we realize that we are not defined by our fears or the opinions of others. We become free to live authentically, trusting that life will unfold as it should. Ultimately, letting go is about freeing ourselves from societal pressures and embracing who we truly are. It's about realizing that our worth is not defined by the approval of others but by our own acceptance. Through this freedom, we create space for peace, joy, and authentic connections. We live not for validation, but for our own inner truth. The freedom of letting go The freedom in Buddhism. In Buddhism, letting go is not about abandoning life or withdrawing from responsibilities. It's about releasing the invisible bonds we've created ourselves. The real freedom comes when we no longer cling to the expectations of others. By letting go of external validation, we free ourselves from fear, judgment, and unnecessary anxiety. This doesn't mean neglecting our duties or responsibilities, but rather recognizing that we cannot control everything in life. Understanding this truth is key to experiencing the true freedom of the present moment. Story example. Think of the famous story of the Buddha's encounter with the parable of the two arrows. One day, the Buddha explains to his followers that when something painful happens, it's like being struck by an arrow. The first arrow represents the initial pain, the loss of something, a disappointment, a failure. The second arrow, however, is the suffering we cause ourselves by dwelling on the pain, the judgment, the self-blame, and the fear of not meeting expectations. The Buddha teaches that while we cannot avoid the first arrow, we can choose not to let the second arrow strike us. Now, imagine someone who has always lived in fear of failure, constantly worrying about what others think of them. They live under constant pressure, trying to meet expectations that are not their own. Their mind is like the person who has been struck by two arrows: first, by the disappointment or failure, and second, by the anxiety, self-doubt, and fear of judgment. But when they learn to let go, they stop adding that second arrow. They realize that failure is a natural part of life, and they can choose not to dwell on it or let it define them. Instead of trying to control every situation, they begin to live freely, without unnecessary fear, accepting that life is imperfect. They find peace in the release of self-judgment, and with that peace comes true confidence and freedom. Buddhism and the release of control. Letting go in Buddhism means surrendering the need for control, not to life itself, but to the attachment we have to specific outcomes. Life is inherently unpredictable, and trying to control every moment only leads to frustration and stress. The Buddhist approach teaches us to detach from the idea of a fixed, controlled reality, and instead embrace the ebb and flow of life as it is. By letting go of this constant need to force outcomes, we make space for life's natural unfolding. This practice is not about becoming passive, but about trusting that things will fall into place, just like water flowing around obstacles. When we let go of the need to control, we allow our energy to flow freely, responding to life's challenges in a calm, balanced way. Life's unpredictability, once feared, becomes a source of empowerment rather than anxiety. The peace in letting go. By releasing our grip on external validation and the need for approval, we make room for peace. In Buddhist teachings, peace is found when we stop resisting life and its imperfections. The more we let go of our attachments, the more we invite a sense of serenity into our hearts. It is through letting go that we open ourselves to the deeper, more peaceful currents of life. We discover that life's true value is not in its outcomes, but in the way we approach it with acceptance, patience, and compassion. The Buddhist approach to detachment. In Buddhism, detachment is not about withdrawing from life or becoming indifferent. It is about freedom from dependency on material things and external recognition. Detachment in Buddhism is not about disconnecting from the world, but about reconnecting with our true nature. Free from fear and anxiety about the future. It creates space for the soul to grow freely, unbound by temporary things such as the approval of others. When we let go of these attachments, we can experience life more fully, live authentically, and find peace in the present moment. Story example. Consider the story of a person who is constantly anxious about how others perceive them in social settings. They always strive to please others, working hard to maintain a perfect image in every interaction. Their life becomes a constant performance, trying to meet everyone's expectations while suppressing their true self. However, one day they come to a realization. All of this effort to gain approval is built on illusion. They understand that nothing external lasts forever, and the opinions of others are fleeting. With this insight, they begin to let go of the need to be validated by others. They stop fearing judgment and allow themselves to be imperfect. The moment they release this attachment to external validation, they find a profound sense of peace within themselves. They begin to form deeper, more authentic connections with others, because they are no longer trying to be someone they are not. They start living freely, from a place of authenticity, and discover a deeper sense of inner calm. Buddhism and the power of letting go. In Buddhism, the concept of detachment is about freeing ourselves from the illusion that we need external things to feel whole. We often mistake external validation like praise, approval, and material success as the markers of our worth. But Buddhism teaches us that these things are transient and ultimately unreliable. By releasing our attachment to them, we come closer to understanding our true nature. This understanding leads to freedom to live without fear. Freedom to be our true selves without the need for approval. And freedom from the endless pursuit of perfection. Buddhism doesn't suggest that we abandon the world. Rather, it encourages us to engage with the world in a mindful and present way. We participate fully in life without being emotionally attached to its outcomes. By detaching from the pressure to constantly prove our worth, we allow ourselves to be more present, more connected to the world, and more at peace with ourselves. The liberation through detachment. Through detachment, we learn to let go of the things that weigh us down. We no longer chase after the approval of others, or get caught up in what is only temporary. This freedom creates a space within us for inner peace to arise, without the constant burden of seeking external validation. We begin to experience life in a deeper, more meaningful way. Detachment doesn't mean becoming cold or indifferent. Rather, it means embracing life with an open heart, free from the fears and attachments that often hold us back. When we practice detachment, we free ourselves to live with greater ease and authenticity. We stop being trapped by the opinions and judgments of others, and instead, we live in harmony with our true nature. This is the essence of the Buddhist approach to detachment. It's not about cutting ourselves off from life, but about living fully and freely, without being enslaved by the fleeting nature of external approval. Practical lessons from Elias and Buddhism. Elias, as a philosopher ahead of his time, urged us not to seek external approval. This idea is echoed in Buddhism through the concepts of anatta, non-self, and mindfulness. When we let go, we begin to live authentically, free from the weight of societal expectations. The self is no longer obsessed with proving or defending itself before the judgment of others. Rather, it becomes a flexible self that embraces the impermanence of life. Through these teachings, both Elias and Buddhism encourage us to detach from the need for external validation and to find peace in our own authenticity. Story example. Imagine someone who has spent their entire life chasing the approval of those around them, always striving for perfection, but never quite feeling satisfied. They are constantly disappointed by their inability to meet the high standards they've set for themselves in the eyes of others. However, when they begin to practice the art of letting go, they shift their perspective through the lens of Buddhism. They come to understand that each moment is precious, and they realize that they don't need to prove anything to anyone. No longer are they burdened by the fear of judgment. As they embrace the teachings of non-self and mindfulness, they begin to notice how much easier life becomes when they stop seeking approval. They start to feel more at peace with themselves, and things flow more naturally. They no longer try to control every outcome, but accept life as it comes, imperfections and all. The wisdom of Elias and Buddhism. Both Elias and Buddhism teach us that true peace lies in releasing the need to conform to others' expectations. Elias's wisdom aligns with the Buddhist teachings of non-attachment, which encourage us to stop identifying with an image we believe we must maintain for the sake of others. When we stop measuring our worth by external standards, we open up the space for authentic living. Mindfulness, a key Buddhist practice, teaches us to live in the present moment, free from the distractions of seeking approval or fearing rejection. It allows us to engage with the world as it is, without the need to manipulate or control the outcome. This practice doesn't mean we give up on ambition or responsibility. Rather, it means we stop tying our sense of worth to the results. By letting go of our attachment to how others perceive us, we can act freely, without the constant anxiety of trying to prove ourselves. Just as Elias emphasized the importance of embracing our humanity, flaws and all, Buddhism teaches us to accept life as it unfolds, with all its uncertainties and imperfections. When we stop fearing judgment, we step into our true power and begin to experience life's natural flow, finding peace in letting go. In both Elias's philosophy and Buddhist teachings, peace is found not in achieving perfection, but in accepting the impermanence of life. Elias urged us to live according to our own principles, free from the need to satisfy societal expectations. And Buddhism encourages us to live with awareness, letting go of the clinging that causes suffering. As we detach from the need for approval, we find that life becomes lighter, more fluid, and more aligned with our true selves. We stop living in reaction to others, and start living in harmony with who we are at our core. When we stop chasing perfection and approval, we create space for authenticity to emerge. Just as Elias believed in living a life true to oneself, free from the dictates of others, Buddhism invites us to embrace the present moment with mindfulness and acceptance. By letting go of the need to be seen in a certain way, we come closer to the true nature of our being. And in this process, we discover a deeper peace that transcends external validation. Conclusion. Thank you for taking the time to watch this video and reflect on the deep wisdom shared. Remember, the more we release our attachments to external validation and societal expectations, the more space we create for peace and authenticity in our lives. I hope this message has resonated with you. And if you've found value in this content, please be sure to like, subscribe, and comment. I would love to hear your thoughts and reflections, and they always inspire me to create more content like this. I look forward to having you join me in the next video, where we'll explore more teachings on how to live a mindful and peaceful life. Until then, take care and remember, true peace comes from within.